Hi, my name is Ryan Holger with Temperature Equipment Corporation and National Excelsior Company. Welcome to this week's webinar. The topic this week is comparison of internet color touchscreen thermostats. This is a little bit different than most of our topics. For some of you guys that are on every week, you know that usually the topics fall into one of two categories. Either it's an application topic, like how do ERVs work, or what is demand control ventilation, or something like that, or it's a new product type, launch type thing where we're explaining a new solution that we've acquired over here at TEC. This one's a little different because we're going to talk about multiple vendors at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of these internet thermostats that are available on the market one by one, and at the end I'll put up a screen where we can kind of see everything side by side, for 6 or 7 different thermostats all at one time, so you can kind of see what the different ones can do. If you have questions as we're going, please type them in the question/chat box down in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'll do my best to answer those as we are progressing through. All right, so here we go. So here's kind of some of the thermostats that we're gonna touch on today. Some of them in more detail than others, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 manufacturers represented on that screen. And I'm sure there are other ones on the market that I don't even have my pulse on, but these are the ones that I'm familiar with, that I've either personally installed or that I have acquired and played with and reviewed in the lab here. So the first one we're going to talk about is Ventstar. The reason we're starting with Benstar is, well, it's the most cost-effective one for starters, but 2, it's my favorite, so why not start with that one? And I've been using it quite a bit. If you didn't know, at TEC here, we've been doing internet accessible HVAC systems since the year 2000. Back at that time, we only did it with commercial building automation systems that we installed, but around 2005 or so, we took on the Prolifics internet stat line, and we've been doing internet thermostats ever since then. And we currently offer 4 different manufacturers internet lines right now, with Ventstar being the primary one here. So you can see on the screen there, it is the color touchscreen thermostat. That stat has been out for 3 or 4 years, and the internet option for that stat has been available for about, we'll say, a year and a half or so. It is backwards compatible, so you can upgrade the firmware on your existing thermostat and then add the Wi-Fi card to it, and I'll show you how that works in a couple minutes here, and make your existing color touch stat from Ventstar now internet accessible. There are apps for the stat, so you can either access the thermostat from the stat itself, you can access it from the website, or you can access it from one of the apps. The apps that are available are for iPhone, iPad, Android, and believe it or not, BlackBerry, if anybody still has one of those laying in their desk drawer somewhere. There are currently 2 flavors of this particular stat. Both of them are called Color Touch, and there are 2 model numbers. T5800 is the residential series, and T6800 is the commercial series. For the most part, these stats are very similar, so when I talk about them, it's going to be the same discussion for both. The main differences really are what you're using it for, in terms of application. So the residential one will have, the typical residential language like wake and sleep and stuff like that, whereas the commercial one will say occupied and unoccupied. You'll also have on the commercial one the ability to, lock out screens with a passcode so people can't mess with it. Residential one will have things like dual fuel heat pump operation, so there'll be a few differences between the 2 of them, but most of the main stuff is going to be the same in how the thermostat is used and how it's navigated. You can also see there in the middle of the screen, this one has an ad for a slice of pie on there. That's something that's been becoming popular with the commercial versions of these stats. Both stats you can load screensaver photos on. Residentially, you're probably going to load photos of the dog or the grandkids or whatever. But commercially, what they've been doing a lot is, if it's a retail environment, they've been loading photos of actual products that they sell. In this case, I'm assuming this is probably like, a Quickie Mart or something like that, and you can get a slice of pie for 99 cents. So there's a little bit of extra play on some of these things in that regard. Additionally, coming very soon, and I'm sure the guys in the office will yell at me for even telling you, but these stats are going to have humidity versions. So the residential one will be T5900 and the commercial will be T6900. And those will have humidity sensors built into the stat. If you're not familiar with the Benstar product line and all of the other thermostats, anything that ends in 900 typically is humidity compatible. So that's kind of how that evolves there. We're going to kind of focus more on the residential stat, but just keep in mind the commercial one does exist out there, and it just got a few different features. But both stats are 4 heat and 2 cool for a heat pump system. If it's a regular gas electric system, it would be 3 heat, 2 cool. So 3 stages of heat, 2 stages of compression. And all these stats can be used for either or. And the residential stat is, like I said, dual fuel capable. So you can have an outside air sensor on there, and you can tell it at a certain temperature, say, I don't know, I'll make it up, 28 degrees outside. I want to stop using my heat pump, and I want to switch over and use my gas furnace. So you can program it to do that based on outdoor air temperature. Or you can manually switch between the two. You can configure the thermostat to be a programmable or a non-programmable stat. So if you got someone who wants the internet stat and they're homebodies, they don't want to have the programmability and mess around with schedules, that's fine. You can do that. And same thing with manual or auto changeover. You can get rid of the auto changeover feature if you don't want it. Some people just like to open their windows in the colder seasons, and that's fine. Other people want to let the HVAC system make all the decisions for them. You can pick either way so they don't have to see buttons that they don't care about. You have the ability to limit set points on these guys so people don't, jack the heat up to 95 or drop the cooling down to 60 or something weird like that. So you have some controllability of that. And you also have controllability of how you program the fan. Instead of just having the fan piggyback off the HVAC schedule, you can actually tell it to do what you want when you want, if you choose to. So you could say Monday through Friday, say it's a commercial building, I want to run the fan from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and on weekends I want it just to be a regular auto fan. You can do that. Or you could even say, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., I want the fan to run for the first 15 minutes of each hour, and then I want it to be off for the next 45, unless I happen to have a heating or cooling call. So that'll take the place residentially of some of those fan cycler controls that you guys have been required to put on by code to either turn on the fan or turn on the fan and open an outdoor air louver. This stat will be able to do that for you without any additional fan cycler controls needed. And this stat does support outdoor air temperature sensing. Like I said, you need that for the dual fuel changeover. It also does display it on the stat. As you can see up in the top right-hand corner, it does display the outside air temperature. And then the commercial one would do the same thing. Or commercially, you can use a remote room sensor on that guy and have the thermostats back, say, in a manager's office, but then have little just sensor squares, little cubes out in the space in a restaurant or something like that. Some of the more interesting features, and by the way, all the stats that we're talking about today, every single brand, they all do all the normal stuff that you would expect from a high-end stat. They're all 7-day programmable. They all have auto changeover. They all have multiple stages of heating and cooling. They all have filter timers and that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to talk about all the the stuff you expect to be there. I'm just talking about stuff that's above and beyond for touch screens or internet stats. Larry asks if the sensors are wireless. By default, the sensors that you can get from Benstar are hardwired, but they are just 10K thermistors, and we do use some third-party 10K wireless thermistors on some products. It is fairly expensive to do that, so we don't do it just for like one sensor on one stat. But if you had like say a whole restaurant and you had 10 systems out there, we might put 10 wireless sensors out there, have them report back to one wireless receiver box, and then have that box wired to all 10 stats. So no, the Ventstar ones are not wireless, but we can get third-party ones if needed. Eric asked if these are 4-wire stats from the furnace to the stat. The answer to that is typically no. These are traditional HVAC wiring, including a common wire. So if you just had one heat, one cool, you would have Y for cooling, W for heat, G for fan, R for hot, and C for common. So 1 stage heat, 1 stage cool would be 5 wires, 2 heat, 2 cool would be 7 wires, and so on down the line. And Tanju, you asked about costs. At the end, I'm going to show you all the costs of all these guys together on the screen at the same time. But this is the least expensive one on the market. But we'll kind of go through that towards the end over here. All right, jumping back in here. So other features that this stat can do, it can proactively send you alert messages either via email or pop up on the stat, or both, obviously. And that information, when that alert pops up on your screen and you click on the alert, it'll have the name of the dealer, their logo, and their phone number, so you know how to contact the dealer to get service done on your particular system. Typical alerts are the usual things like filter changes and stuff like that. But you can also set up alerts for high temp and low temp. So if this is a vacation home or the people are snowbirds or something like that. You could set it up so if it drops below, say, 50 degrees, they'll get an alarm so they know their house is about to freeze, kind of thing. So there's some stuff like that you can do. Multiple languages, typically you'll have it set up for English, but some of you guys do have, European customers or Spanish-speaking customers that would like to have other languages. It can do that. There are interchangeable faceplates for this stat. The default is white. You could also get black, silver, or like a wood grain finish. I'll just warn you on that, though, that it just changes the faceplate. The side of the stat actually still stays white. So as long as you're okay with that, then it's a pretty cool feature. But just be warned that the side doesn't change with it. This stat does have a screensaver mode, and you can have the screensaver just go to one of the default ones, or you can load your own pictures onto this stat through an SD card like you're using your camera. There's a slot on the side I'll show you in a minute here. You can load up to 100 photos onto the thermostat, and the thermostat will scroll through those photos in a screensaver type fashion. So basically the thermostat can double as a digital picture frame, if you will, sitting on your wall. So instead of just seeing a plain ugly stat, they can have it scroll through pictures of their last vacation or their grandkids or whatever they want. And you can also change the wallpaper. The wallpaper is the background there, so like on this one on the screen, you can see it's a picture of an ocean with some mountains. You can make that whatever you want. So you can make it an ocean, you can make it the Chicago Blackhawks logo, whatever you want it to be. And you can change that through the SD card slot. This is what it looks like when an error message pops up and you click on the alert message. It'll show you the logo of your dealer. In this case, it just says your company logo here. And they'll show your dealer's contact info, website, email, phone number, so you can get a hold of your dealer and have them service your system. So that's kind of nice to be able to figure out who your dealer is. The other nice thing for dealers is there is a nice checkout screen on this stat. So instead of having to fake stats out to try to get one stage of heat to call and then 2 stages by faking set points, or get cooling the call by breathing on the stat and that kind of stuff, you can just come into the checkout screen and you can tell it exactly which stages you want to turn on and off and when. And you can even tell it to turn on second stage heat but not first stage if you want to troubleshoot that particular wiring. So you tell it what you want to turn on the left side here, and then down on the right hand side it'll actually show you which outputs are on, and then you can use your meter to go verify that those are actually on and then verify that the equipment is actually running. Larry asks if the faceplates cover all the old model thermostats up. The faceplates fit on all the color touch style thermostats, but Ventstar's been making thermostats for 15 or so years, and they would not fit on those old thermostats, just on the color touchscreen ones. They're all universal in that regard. There is a software tool like you're going to see on many of these thermostats we're going to talk about today. There's a software tool that you can use to do some stuff with this stat on your computer and then load that stuff onto the thermostat. So the one is the picture gallery. This is where you're going to load photos onto the SD card. So like I said, you can have up to 100 photos. By using this Color Touch Assistant software, it'll make sure the photos are the right format, and you can make sure that they fit on the screen and that kind of stuff. It's also where you're going to configure your dealer information, so where you load your dealer logo at, where you type in your information. So you don't have to type it on the thermostat screen, you can type it on the computer and load that on the SD card. You could load your schedules onto the SD card if you wanted to. It probably doesn't make any sense. I'm assuming once you get the stat hooked up to the internet, you're just going to do the scheduling over the web. Is probably what most people will do. That's why they're buying the thermostat to begin with. But if you want to put it on the card, so there's a schedule in there when your tech sets the system up, you can do that. You can also do all the thermostat configuration settings on the software and preload it onto the SD card and then dump it into the stat once the stat's on the wall. That's useful if you got multiple stats that are going to be the same, or if you're doing, like, I don't know, you got a McMansion that has 10 of these systems in there. You can use that as a starting point to make all the systems identical. And it's also where you'll do the firmware upgrades for the stat. So the current version of the stat software is version 2.1. If you have an older version, 2.03 or something like that, and you want to upgrade to the new one, you can do that by loading an SD card through this Color Touch Assistant software. So this is kind of what it looks like. Where's my clicker here? Oops. Sorry about that. I skipped the slide there. This is what it looks like when you plug the Wi-Fi card into the stat. So it does look a little bit weird because you've got this little nub sticking off the side. But that is what was done to make the existing stat compatible with Wi-Fi. Normally this is where your picture card would slide in to load pictures on the stat, but you take that picture card out and you slide this Wi-Fi card into that slot, and now this stat is Wi-Fi. So the nice thing about that is it means that the existing color touch stats out there in the marketplace can be easily upgraded without having to change the stat out. You just add the Wi-Fi card. The other nice thing about that is we got a question that came up. Are Benstar stats compatible with hydronic zone applications such as in-floor, is Dale's question. The answer is yes, Dale, and for the most part you can use any heating thermostat you want to do in-floor systems, and we do use lots of different brands of stats for our in-floor designs here. The only caveat is that sometimes people will specify they want to have a floor slab sensor on a radiant floor system, and in that case all these thermostats we're talking about today will not do that. You have to switch over to like a Ray Howe thermostat or something like that. And they have internet accessible systems as well. But generally speaking, most floor systems do not require a floor slab sensor, and we use regular heating thermostats on those systems. And Lupe asks if this Wi-Fi key is included with the T5800 stat. The answer to that is no, and that's kind of what we were talking about here. It is sold as two different pieces, so you would buy the stat and you would buy the Wi-Fi card and use them together. And that does allow people to use the same thermostat. If someone says, hey, I don't want the Wi-Fi, but I want the color touch stat, fine, you can do that. And they come back to you a month later and say, yeah, you know that Wi-Fi internet thingy you were talking about? Yeah, I want that now. Now you don't have to resell them a stat and piss them off. You could just sell them this card, and they can slide it in the side. You don't even have to show up at the job site, really. You could just send it to them, and they can pop it in, assuming they're reasonably tech-savvy. So it is two separate pieces there. And the Wi-Fi card does come with a little clip. So normally you just slide it in the SD card slot on the side, like it's showing right there under that red dot, which is fine for your house. But in the commercial applications, if you got something sticking out of the side of a stat, somebody's going to play with it. So what you can do is take the stat off the wall, just pop it off the wall, slide the SD card Wi-Fi in the side there, and then there's a little plastic clip that comes with it. You can stick under the back behind the stat that locks it in place so you cannot take it back out, and then you pop the stat back on the wall. Takes like 30 seconds. I just did it on the one on my desk here this morning, and it was fairly easy to do. So you can use it to buy with the stat currently, or you can upgrade old color touch stats. This is just a couple screenshots of what the iPhone app looks like. The iPad app and the Android app and the BlackBerry app all look very similar, but this is just what that one happens to look like. So obviously you have to log in. So you'll initially set up your password and stuff on the website, and I'll show you the website in a second here. But once you're using the apps, you'll log in to your own particular account, and that account can have multiple locations. So you can have your house in Chicago, you can have your condo in Florida, you can have your place in Tahoe, or however many vacation houses you're lucky enough to have. Or it could be a commercial building, and maybe you got 10 Subway stores or whatever it is. I don't know. So you can have multiple locations, and over here you can scroll through those locations. And then under each location, you could have multiple thermostats at that location. So in this case, it is, what does that say, Granada Hills House, and they have 3 thermostats there at that particular property. So you can scroll through those thermostats. It does give you a little weather forecast, and then you can click on any one of your stats to go see what they look like, and I'll show you that in a second. Additionally, you can have your alerts fed through your app, so you don't have to check your email. It'll automatically pop up on your app and ping you. You can send a message to your thermostat. That might sound a little weird, but we've actually had a lot of people get excited about that. From your app or from the website, you can type in a message that will pop up on a box on your thermostat. So consumers can do that to message themselves if they want to, although you probably would just text message your spouse. You wouldn't send them a message to the thermostat. But dealers can use that to message consumers' thermostats and say, hey, it's October and we noticed you haven't done your cleaning check yet. There's a special right now for $99 or whatever you want to pop up on their stat. They could disable that and block you if they want to, but as long as you don't abuse it and send them one every week, you just do a couple a year, they probably will be happy to get those reminder type things from you. And there's also some energy tracking stuff, and I'll show you that on the website version. So this is what the website looks like. I'm actually going to flip over real quick and actually do it live instead of showing you the slides, and that might be slightly more exciting. So hopefully this works fine here. Get my page up. All right, so hopefully you can see my web browser here. There's the first thing is there's the Ventstar website, which I'm showing you right here. It's Ventstar.com. It has all their products on there, but the main thing on the featured front page is the Color Touch stat. If you want to learn more about the stat, you can click on this Discover button here, and then from there, there's all kinds of categories you can read, videos down at the bottom that you can watch if you like, and stuff like that. We're not going to do that today. You guys can do that later if you want. Where you want to go to log into the actual thermostat is the Skyport one here, and I've already got that popped open and logged in to save us a little time here. So after you log in, this is what it looks like. You can have multiple locations. I just happen to have one location, which is Melrose Park Lab, which is my office here, where I got this thing sitting on the workbench. It gives you a little forecast for the week of what the weather looks like, which is not that exciting because you can do that anywhere. It gives you some runtime history. Now, in my case, you'll see that it shows December and then April. Well, that's because the stat, I had used it for a class in December, and then I put it in my drawer and hadn't used it again until April when I ran another training class. But normally you'd have better data than I have because you'd have it on your wall all the time. On the left-hand side, it tells you what's going on a weekly basis. And you can turn some of these on and off if you don't want to see them. If you don't want to see what's going on with heat, you can simply turn the heating-related stuff off and just see cooling. So here's how much cooling it ran last week, 6 hours. Obviously not very much because it's sitting on a workbench. And then today, 1.5 hours. Right? If I want to look at the heating at the same time, I can add those back in. Same thing with the monthly stuff. I can turn off and just look at heating or cooling by themselves if I choose to. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of how you're doing, historically this week versus last week, this month versus last month kind of thing. And then if you don't like that view, you can look down at the bottom and you can see it kind of on these dashboard style gauges as well. Okay? So that's the dashboard. The main thing that you're probably going to do is go to the thermostat section here. When I click on thermostat, it's going to go interrogate the thermostat I got sitting on the table here. And you can see I do have an alert message. I don't know what that one is. Let's just click on it and see what it is. It's actually reminding me to change my filter. All right, so that's good. It'll also send me an email telling me that it's time to change my filter. And this is based on the filter timer that my technician had set up initially, which in my case probably is whatever the default was. I'm going to go back here. Maybe I'm going to go back. Hang on. All right. My browser doesn't want to cooperate here. Give me 1 second to figure out why I can't move around my browser. Okay, I got my browser fixed, I think. All right, sorry about that. Couldn't open any other pages either. All right, so same thing on there. Under thermostats is where we were a second ago. Excuse me. So this is what it looks like when you look at your thermostat. So it's what you would expect to see. It's just a little mini version of your thermostat. You can come in and change your set points. As soon as I go to click on one of these set points and change them, it's going to ask me, do I want to save those changes? And I can either hit cancel or submit, or I can keep changing stuff if I'm not done changing it yet. When I'm all done, I can hit submit, and it'll send the changes down to my thermostat. I can switch my modes. Right now I'm in auto, but I can switch from heat, cool, and off. So if this is a vacation home and I normally have it off, I can turn the cooling on as I'm getting ready to go over there. And then I can also change my my schedule. Right now it's programmable on. I can make it non-program, turn the program off if I want to. And my fan is currently set to run continuously. I can switch it over to auto if I want to. And I can also enable my vacation settings if I want to. Like if I'm at the airport and I forgot to turn the stat back, I can come in here and click vacation on and I'm good to go. Here's where I can message my thermostat if I want to, although you guys won't see this because you're not going to be able to see my thermostat on the table, but you can type whatever you want it in, obviously make it sound more professional than I did, and it'll send it off to the thermostat. And my thermostat over here is going to bing. You probably didn't hear that. I'm not sure if you did. It makes a beep noise. Let me know there's a message. I can also add more thermostats. If I had another thermostat in this particular home, I can add it right here, and it would all be under this particular location. I could also go over to locations and add more locations. Under the profile stuff, it's like you'd expect. That's where you set up your email address so it knows where to send messages and things like that. Let's go back there. Oh, I don't want to go all the way back. Oops. All right, we'll go to my locations. The last thing I'll show you here under the thermostats, and then we'll move on to the next stat, is under Properties. So under Properties here, I can rename my thermostat if I want to. I just called mine Demo. Most people would call it first floor, second floor, whatever. You can have multiple sensors connected to the stat. In my case, I don't really have much connected here. But like I said, you can do an outdoor air temperature sensor, or if you prefer, you could do a supply sensor, or a return air sensor, or a remote room sensor. You got a couple choices there. And More asks, what is the fan related to HVAC supply fan? Correct. The fan is the fan for the furnace or the rooftop unit or whatever the HVAC equipment is that you're controlling with your heating and cooling. Bob asks if the outdoor air temperature sensor is wired, and the answer to that is yes. It's the same as that remote room sensor we were talking about earlier. Traditionally, it is wired. The one Benstar can supply is a wired stat. We do occasionally use third-party versions to get wireless ones, but it is fairly costly to get the wireless ones. You can set up notifications on here. There's a few things that you can set up. You can set up a general service reminder, which basically just in the thermostat itself, you tell it how many months the reminder is going to be, but the consumer can turn it on or off here. You, as the service technician, would set up that timer. Same with the dirty filter. You, in the thermostat setup, would set up how long the filter should be changed, every 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and they can turn it on or off if they want to get an email for it or not. Same thing with the UV light bulb timer. The two that they can change are the indoor high temp and indoor low temp. So indoor low temp, I got mine set for 55 degrees. If it's ever below 55 degrees, I want to get an email message telling me that. And I can make that whatever I want from 99 down to 35. And the last thing on here is the scheduling functions. So if I want to do my scheduling for my thermostat, I can do that right here. So if I want to change one of these, if I scroll down, now my thing's not scrolling. I think what happens is I got two monitors here, and this monitor is smaller than the other one, so it doesn't quite fit nicely like it should. All right, but you would be able to change these schedules. There would be an edit button down here if I could scroll down right now. I have to resize my frame for it to work right. I do have a question from Clarence. Can you use this thermostat on a boiler? The answer to that would be yes. And do you need two complete thermostat Skyport keys for a two-zone heating system? The answer to that would be yes. If you have multiple stats, each stat would have its own Wi-Fi key plugged into the side of the stat. And then when you logged in here like I did a minute ago, it would be reflective of that. You would have as many stats as you wanted, and the stats don't care if they're wired to a zone panel or to a boiler or to a furnace or to a AC. All they're going to do is turn on Y1, Y2, W1, W2. So if you had a two-zone, say two-zone Honeywell panel that's controlling air zone dampers, you could put two of these stats, one on each zone damper, and each one of them would be independently controlled just like they would be if they were on your wall. All right. So I'm going to pop back over to the slides over here. We'll just skip these ones. This is an example of what the email alerts would look like. Here's a dirty filter alert. It tells you, it's time to replace your HVAC filters at a certain location. In my case, Melrose Lab. In your case, Florida Condo for the second floor unit or whatever it was. And then it gives you a little paragraph on why it's important to do that, and call your HVAC guy if you need some help, kind of thing. Here's an example of the high temperature alert. I faked it out. I told it I wanted an alarm if it's above 70 degrees. That way I can get an alarm message to show you here today. But it would tell you what it is, normally say 85 degrees or something like that. And you'll also get reminders or notifications, I should say, if there's a new software that you'd like to download for your stat or not. Let's see if there's any last questions on that one. And More ask if you have to have a BAS system in place for this thermostat or it will work without such a system. Yeah, this thermostat is intended for people that are not going to go the BAS route. If you got, a VAV system with 30 VAV boxes and a chiller and a boiler and an air handler, that's going to be a building automation system. But if you got 2 or 3 little rooftop units and you look at a building automation system and say, oh crap, that's going to cost $6,000 and this is going to cost $600 or whatever, that's when you would use this. So these thermostats are used unrelated to a building automation system. No BAS required. It's just the stat and then the Wi-Fi card, and then you log into the website, and that's pretty much it. And that's going to be true of all these internet stats we're talking about today. These are unrelated to building automation systems. This is like building automation light for people that want internet access but are not going to go the full building automation route because they only got a few simple things like a split system or a rooftop unit or something like that. All right, the next one we're going to look at is going to be one more question here from Larry. Will this thermostat give you a number of starts and stops for either heat or cool? You know, I'll have to look at that, Larry. I'm not sure if it gives you, it doesn't do it from the website, but it might be something that we can look at from the thermostat itself. So I will have to check on that, Larry, and I'll let you know. I'm not sure if it gives you how many starts you've had. So I'll write a note here to call you back, Larry. Okay. All right, so moving on. All right, the next one we want to talk about is the Honeywell Prestige IAQ stat. This is the Honeywell version of a internet accessible color touch screen thermostat. You may think you already know this stat, you probably do, but this is slightly different. This stat did get re-released this year with a different hardware and some different features. So this one is a little bit different. You can probably look at it visually and tell that it's different. It's smaller, so it's not as tall, it's not as wide, and it's not as thick, and the screen resolution is a little bit better. Basically, there's 3 pieces involved, and usually you're buying the 2 pieces on the left as a kit, and then you're buying the one on the right separately, usually. But Honeywell has so many different weird kit packages, you could probably buy it 12 different ways, with or without remote sensors and all that stuff. But this is the basic system. So this is the Prestige stat right here. It is a 2-wire thermostat that speaks wirelessly on the HVAC side and on the internet side. So the reason it has 2 wires is that it needs power, because most LCD displays are fairly power hungry, so you're not going to be running these things off of batteries. So it does need 2 wires for power, but that's all it's doing, 24 volts. Then the stat wirelessly talks over here to the equipment interface module, which is this gray box on the side, and that sits down next to your furnace or up near your rooftop unit, depending on which scenario you have, and that has all the regular HVAC wiring. So G for fan, Y1, Y2 for cooling, W1, W2, R and C, and all that usual stuff. So the nice thing about this stat is that I only need 2 wires going through the wall, and chances are I always have 2 wires. Even if I had someone who had a heating only system and they're now adding cooling, they still had a 2-wire Honeywell, thermostat on the wall. Most people have 4 or 5 wires, but even if they only had 2, this guy would work. So he's kind of nice in that regard. So he talks wirelessly over a special protocol that Honeywell uses called Redlink. They use it on their HVAC and their security systems. So he talks wirelessly back to this equipment module, and that equipment module has the relays that actually turn on the furnace, AC, rooftop, boiler, zone panel, whatever it's going to be. This black box on the right is the Redlink internet router. So this thermostat also uses the Redlink protocol to talk wirelessly to this black box. And that black box is plugged into the homeowner's regular router at their house to get onto the internet. So that's kind of how this guy works. So some of the highlights of him, it does have multiple colors. It says on here 4 colors. It's kind of really 3 colors, but it's black, gray, and white. Although you can also do one that's kind of a white, black, 2-tone combo, I guess is how they get the 4th color. So it's a little bit weird there. But it is the newer version. This is the 3rd version of this particular Prestige product that's out there. So it has all the stuff that version 1 and version 2 had, plus a few extra things, and it's a little bit smaller. So it still has all the old stuff you're familiar with, which is the interview-based programming. It says, what time do you wake up? And you tell it, 6 o'clock in the morning. What time do you leave for work? What time do you get home? What time do you go to bed? You answer these plain English questions, and it builds your schedule based on that, which is kind of nice. One of the new things that it has that should be pretty helpful is it has the ability to do some diagnostic monitoring. So normally these thermostats, these internet stats, will alarm you if something bad happens, right? And in the case of the Benstar one I just showed you, if it's too cold or too hot in my house, I want to get an alarm. Or too cold in my building, I want to get an alarm so my pipes don't freeze when I show up on Monday morning for work. Well, this Honeywell one has a Delta T alert, so what it can do is it can track the, when you're in the heating mode or cooling mode, if it's expecting to see a certain temperature change between supply and return and it doesn't see it, it can alert you. So if you get the optional sensors for supply and return air monitoring, which you probably want to do with this stat, it'll be able to monitor that and know that it's supposed to get whatever, 20-degree drop in the cooling mode, and if it's not getting that, it can send you an alert telling you something's wrong. Obviously, you're getting a little bit of cooling, but not enough, and you probably wouldn't know it's a problem until a couple months later when it got really bad. But this will kind of proactively alarm people, so that's kind of nice. It does have the ability to do humidity control, which the Benstar one does not yet have, but will soon. So this guy can control your humidifier, or it can control your dehumidification sequence, like on your furnace to slow down your blower type of thing. So it has some extra options there. Just like the Ventstar one, it is 4 heat and 2 cool on a heat pump system, 3 heat and 2 cool on a gas electric system. Could do the dual fuel changeover and all that kind of stuff. The other big difference between the Honeywell and the Ventstar one is that the Honeywell has a 5-year warranty, whereas Ventstar thermostats have a standard 1-year warranty. So the Honeywell one's got a pretty good warranty. So that's a plus on the Honeywell side. This is what it looks like when you log into your stat. I am going to jump over real quick and actually log into one. So Honeywell, I got 3 websites pulled up here. I'll show you real quick just so you know them. The first thing is the consumer website is mytotalconnect.com/comfort, and I'll give you these links one more time again at the end of the presentation. That's the normal site that customers would go to, and then they would come over here and log in. Just be careful, because if you go to mytotalconnect.com without the /comfort, it actually takes you to a different Honeywell website to log into a different Honeywell product. So it's a little bit confusing there, but that's the consumer website. The main marketing website and service website for that matter is forwardthinking.honeywell.com. Many of you probably have used this before. If you click on thermostats, you can see all of the thermostats that Honeywell sells on there, and the first one is this new Prestige IAQ. You can read the stuff I just showed you, and on the right-hand side you can get the brochures and that kind of stuff. There is a interactive demo you can download, which I'll show you in a minute. All the install manuals, install videos, and consumer videos listed down there too. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do in terms of learning more about that. The other thing you could have done instead of clicking on thermostats is clicked on this accessories, and the first accessory on there is the Redlink Accessory, and one of those here under training is the online demo, and I already have that opened up here. So the online demo looks just like the consumer website that we would have logged into here a minute ago. If I would have logged in, it would have looked like this. The difference here is it takes me to this demo site, which for whatever reason must be Isabel's site, I don't know. And you can just click on login with no password and actually play with a fake stat. You can see what it looks like to log into a single stat or to multiple locations. I'll pick multiple in this case. So in this case, there's four locations that this person owns. A couple of them have 2 zones. I will click on the first one, which is my house. It shows me my 2 systems, my living room and my master bedroom. I'll click on the living room one in this case, and then there's my stat. I can change the mode from heating to cooling. I can put it in auto. I can turn it off. I can adjust my set points. I can put it in the hold mode. I can change those basic kind of things, and then when I'm happy with that, I can hit submit. In this case, it's a demo, so I can do whatever I want. It's not going to hurt anybody. I got a menu setting here, right? So I can change the name of my stat if I want to. I can set up some alerts on here, just like the Ventstar one. If I want to get an alert whenever it's, say, above 90 and below 45, I could do that. I can also do alerts on the humidity side. So if it's above, say, 65 or below 20, give me an alert for that. And then I can set up alerts if for some reason Honeywell can't find my thermostat anymore. I lost internet connection to my stat. They can't talk to me for, say, in this example, we'll say 2 hours. They can't talk to me for 2 hours. I want to get an alert saying, hey, something's wrong with your stat. All right, so I got some of these alerts that I can change, very similar to what the Benstar one allowed me to change on here. Let's go back a couple screens here. I can do that on a stat-by-stat basis here. And I can also change settings for my entire property, although you can't do that in the demo mode. I can go look at a different property, get the same kind of stuff, and be able to change things like that. So it's pretty basic on the stuff you can do, but it's the stuff that you'd want to do. You want to log into your vacation house before you get there and change the set points, or you're going on vacation and you jumped on the plane and you landed and you said, crap, honey, we didn't change back the stat to save energy for the next week. You can log in and change it real quick and put it in the hold mode or something like that. So it does what you want. You can change set points and you can get alerts if something bad happened. So Honeywell and Ventstar are very similar in that particular regard. All right, so that was the Honeywell one, and there's a few other Honeywell Internet stats I'll mention later, but that was the one that is comparable to all the stats we're talking about today, which is color touchscreen stats. The next one we're going to talk about is the Bryant Evolution Connects. At the same time, we're going to talk about the Carrier Infinity Touch because these stats are nearly identical. So I'm going to talk about them just in one swoop and do it all at the same time here. So on the Bryant side, it's called Evolution Connects. On the Carrier side, it's called Infinity Touch. The first thing you need to know about these stats is they're not normal traditional stats. They only work when they're connected to Bryant and Carrier Evolution and Infinity equipment. That means the fan coil or the furnace that the consumer owns must be able to speak that language, or the rooftop unit for that matter if it's a small rooftop. It's got to be able to speak the language of that piece of equipment. Whereas the Ventstar and Honeywell can be retrofitted on anybody's equipment. So this is just specifically for Carrier and Bryant equipment that is Evolution or Infinity compatible. The nice thing about this stat is it's always 4 wires, regardless of what you have going on. So it could be as many heating and cooling stages as you want, humidification, dehumidification, ERVs, everything. It's always 4 wires because it's not using regular relays. It's doing communication between the two. So there's a circuit board in that furnace that communicates over to the thermostat over these 4 wires. A and B are your signal communication. C and D are just 24-volt power. So most houses have 4 wires in the wall, as do most commercial rooftop systems. So retrofitting this on to an existing wiring situation is very easy to do. The outdoor units can be communicating or non-communicating, and we do a whole 4-hour class on how to install these stats and these systems. But for today's purposes, we're going to assume everything's communicating, furnace and outdoor unit. Outdoor unit meaning AC or heat pump. All right, so there are some Carrier and Bryant equipment that you actually have to use this stat with, and you don't have a choice. That is the equipment that is modulating in capacity. So on the heat pump side, there's a heat pump with a variable speed inverter compressor for both Carrier and Bryant. That heat pump, which is the green speed or the extreme, those ones have to be used with this stat. And then on the furnace side, the ones that have modulating gas valves have to use this particular stat as well. The reason being is you got a modulating gas valve, you got a variable speed inducer, you got a variable speed blower, you got a modulating compressor, you got a modulating condenser fan, and then you got a 600-step expansion valve that's electronically controlled. You got 6 things that are basically modulating. So somebody's got to coordinate all that crap, and it ends up being the thermostat. So with that modulating equipment, you really have to use this thermostat. Some features on this thermostat, it looks very similar to the ones I just showed you in terms of what you can do. Change your heating and cooling set points, switch from auto mode and all that kind of stuff, put your fan on continuous, hold mode, etc. It does have one pretty cool thing on here called touch and go. Basically right now if I came home from work early, I can come over here on the left-hand side and I could just click on that home button right there and it would automatically go to my normal home occupied settings. Same thing at night or any other period of the day. I can override it with one click, which is pretty nice. Oops, sorry about that. Where's my mouse? Gimpy on me here. All right, there we go. Gotta get rid of that red dot. It does have interview-based programming like the Honeywell Prestige. So it'll ask you, what time do you wake up in the morning? What time do you go to bed? When do you leave for work? It'll ask you like 5 or 6 plain English questions, and it'll build your schedule based on that. It also has a USB connection on the bottom of the stat. This can be used for several different things. The consumer can use it to upload a screensaver photo. It is just one photo, though, unlike the Benstar one, which had 100 photos rotating. This is a single photo. But still, it's nice to throw a picture of the family on there, or the dog, or whatever it's going to be, Chicago Bears logo, etc. You can also use the USB connection to load your dealer contact info, so your name, your phone number, website, etc., and your logo for your dealer. So when there's an alarm message and they click on that alarm message for their igniter having a problem or their filter being dirty or whatever, they'll see your contact info and be prompted to contact you. You would also use that USB connection for any upgrades to the stat itself. So if new software comes out, which it did earlier in May, you would be able to upgrade your thermostat through the USB connection. It does have a pretty cool energy tracking mode. Excuse me, it has energy tracking mode, but right now I was going to tell you about the smart setback. What this does is not only does it do the typical smart recovery where if you say I want to go occupied at 8 a.m., it starts tweaking your set points at whatever, 7:42 or whatever time it calculates it needs to tweak them to get there by 8 o'clock. It does that, but also it doesn't allow the stat to set back too far and waste energy. This is especially useful on heat pump systems that have electric backup heat. If I tell this thing to go set back at 60, well, when I come out of setback, it may kick the heat pump on, and then second stage heat pump, and then it may say, oh crap, it's so cold, and I got to kick on electric heaters too. Well, this stat will say in advance, it'll go, it'll calculate, oh, well, you want to go down to 60, but I'm only going to let you go down to 64 today because that's what I calculate will keep you from having to put electric heat on tomorrow morning. So it does kind of help you save energy without you even really knowing that it's doing that. The carrier version of this stat also has an energy tracking feature that I'm going to mention briefly, but I will caution you that it only works with certain pieces of equipment, so it does not work with every Infinity piece of equipment. It only works with the newer stuff like the modulating gas furnace and the inverter heat pump. Some of the older Infinity stuff does not, the furnace itself does not have the ability to track the energy, hence the stat does not have the ability to report the energy to you. But a lot of folks have been asking about it, so I'll just mention it briefly. There's a weather app built into the stat, so it'll give you your weather forecast right on the face of the stat, which is kind of nice. That's 77 degrees on my screen right there. That is coming from your local sensor wired to your condensing unit or to your furnace. But the rest of the temperatures, the high and low forecast, the sun or rain or snow or whatever, and the forecast for the whole week, those are coming from the internet. So it's kind of nice. Yeah, you can get that on your phone, obviously. Tony sent a message saying he lost audio. Can anybody else still hear me? If you can hear me, do me a favor and type in the question chat box that you can hear me. All right, looks like he got it back, so hopefully you guys are all good as well. Gary asks, what about the Honeywell New Vision Pro Wireless? I'll show you that guy in a couple seconds here, or a couple minutes here, Tony. All right, thanks, guys. I see that you guys can hear me again. We're all good. So built-in weather app. There are websites, which I'll show you here in a second. And then there's obviously apps for your iPad, iPhone, and Android. This stat, the Bryant and Carrier version both, they work with non-zoned and zoning systems. And not only do they control heating and cooling, they also control the humidifier, and they will control the speed of your Bryant or Carrier ERV if you have one of those on there. It'll also give you reminders about your filter, and those are not timers. Those are actually based on filter sensing, pressure drop, and UV timers. It does work with the zone systems. All the zoning systems we've had before with Carrier Infinity and Bryant Evolution are compatible with the stat. Same dampers, same zone board, same smart sensors, remote sensors. You're just changing out the user interface and making your system be internet accessible. That's a whole other topic in itself, and we did a webinar on that a couple months ago, and you can watch the recorded version of that if you want to learn more about the zone systems. Like I said, it's 4 wires from the user interface to the furnace, then out to the condensing unit. That's the ABCD. You can have a remote room temperature sensor on the stat if you want to hide the stat in a closet. That's fine. The humidifier itself does not wire to the stat. It wires to the furnace circuit board. So that means you don't have to have extra wires going up to the stat. And the outdoor air temperature sensor is built into the condensing unit. And if you don't have one because you have an old condensing unit, you can wire it to the furnace board like this is showing you here. So really from upstairs to down to the furnace, you really only need 4 wires. And you can do everything. And you're looking for those 4-wire plugs. This is a fan coil. A furnace would be similar. Here's a condensing unit. Same thing, the ABCD 4-wire plug. There's your outside air sensor already factory installed on your condensing unit. If you have the outside air sensor on there and you're controlling the humidifier, like many other high-end thermostats, it can be set up to track the humidity based on outside air temperature. So the colder it gets, you reset the humidity set point lower so you don't end up condensing on the window surfaces. The best thing about this stat is that it's self-configuring. So this is really the coolest thing about it. When you power this thing up, after you wire it to the furnace and AC, power it up, it goes and scans that communication cable and looks for equipment. And all of the equipment that Carrier ships that speaks this language has a little identifying chip in there that has the model and serial number of that piece of equipment. So it finds that and brings it in, and it knows that it's connected to an 80,000 BTU modulating gas furnace with a 2-stage outdoor condensing unit that's 3 tons. It figures that out on its own based on scanning that network, and then it goes ahead and sets up the airflows that are appropriate for that piece of equipment. So if you've got a 3-ton unit, it knows what airflow it needs to run the blower at for that particular unit at each of its stages. So it really is kind of a really easy thing to set up. So it'll set up all that stuff that it can on its own, so you don't have to mess around with any dip switches and any of that kind of stuff to fix your airflows or jumpers or anything of that nature. But then it'll also ask you some questions. For example, do you want to have the filter reminder be a timer, or do you want to have it actually monitor the pressure? And the furnace has the ability to sense that pressure, which I'll explain in a minute. We call that true sense dirty filter detection, and actually tell you when the filter is truly dirty as opposed to some random timer. So that's pretty cool. The furnace itself will do a static pressure check. Basically, it knows how fast the blower is running because it's communicating to the motor in the blower. It's communicating that motor two-way, and it's getting feedback from the motor. And the motor says, hey, I'm running at a certain RPM, which correlates to a certain static pressure and a certain CFM. So it's always knowing what the static pressure is that it's operating at and the current CFM that it's delivering. So as the filter gets dirty, it'll increase the blower RPM in order to get the same CFM that is required for your particular mode of heating and cooling. And then when the filter is actually dirty, it'll alarm you based on that. If you got a zone system, it'll do the same thing for each one of the zones individually, opening them one at a time and figuring out their individual airflows. Then it'll give you a report saying, hey, you got this much air going to zone 1, this one's for zone 2, zone 3, etc. And oh, by the way, 11% of it, I have no idea where it's going, so it must be leaking. Because it knows the whole CFM, and it knows the CFM as the zone damper shut off, and whatever the difference is leakage between the furnace and the zone damper takeoffs themselves. So it's kind of pretty nice like that. If you hook it up to the variable speed heat pumps, it'll actually also help you charge the unit and give you pressure data and stuff like that. So it goes out and it already knows the condensing unit you have and how much refrigerant it holds. It'll ask you what evaporator model number is that you put on it, and it knows how much refrigerant that holds. And then it asks you how long and size of the line set, and knows how much refrigerant that holds. If it knows those three things, evaporator, condenser, and line set, it knows how much refrigerant should be in the system, and it'll tell you how much to weigh in. In this case, 15 pounds, 12 ounces. The unit came with 15 pounds. I got to weigh in 12 ounces. And you can also do it based on subcooling charging. Basically, it does the same thing that all your little old slide rules used to do, but it's doing it in the stat. So it's telling me I'm trying to get to 8.3 as my subcooling. And you can see it'll actually give me data about how much airflow I'm running at and so forth. And down on the bottom here in the last screen, it actually tells me what my refrigerant pressures are, my suction and my discharge pressure, 159 and 364. So it has those sensors built in there to tell me what's going on. So theoretically, I don't even need my gauges. Eric asks if these thermostats are backwards compatible with all of the Evolution and Infinity stats we have ever installed. Same question on zoning. Yes. If you have an Infinity or Evolution stat on the wall today, zoning or non-zoning, this guy can definitively replace that. So yes. All right, this is what the stat looks like for the consumer. I'm going to power through a couple slides here and get us to the other thermostats. Scheduling, like you'd expect, just like the other stats. It does the interview-based scheduling like the Honeywell one does. You can upload photos, set up your Wi-Fi, custom name your zones, see what's going on with the weather. This is what the scheduling looks like. Guide me through. It says what time do you wake up, when do you leave for work, when do you get back, what time do you go to bed, and it builds your schedule based on that, really. If an error pops up, and hopefully you don't get a pilot light error, this is just a little joke we have on here, but you'll get something, an error off a piece of equipment. That equipment monitors dozens of different variables, and it can't communicate that back to you. So not only does it tell you there's a problem, it'll tell you the specific problem. Like you have an igniter fault, you hit the high temperature limit, you are exceeding the airflow static pressure limitations of the unit, your filter is dirty. It's actually measuring these things in the unit and communicating to the circuit board in the unit, so it knows the safety reason that this thing was shut down, and it'll tell you the specific reason why it's shut down. And then when you click on that little orange error thing on there, it'll actually tell you who your dealer is and so forth. You can also go in from the service settings and look at the faults that have happened over time. So here we got a low pressure switch problem, a high pressure switch problem, under voltage problem. It measures that on the equipment, and it'll actually report that back to you, and you can see that historically. On the stat, you can usually see the last 10 things that have happened. On the website, you can see back pretty much indefinitely. So let me just show you the website real quick. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to use the slides in the interest of time instead of going and logging into one. But this is what it looks like. This is the Bryant one. The Carrier one looks very similar. There's a demo, so if you go to try it out now, you can do a little online demo. Learn more is a bunch of videos that you can watch that show the consumer how to change their set points and things like that. And then downloads is where you go get your apps and so forth. These are the websites up there on top: myevolutionconnects.bryant.com, myinfinitytouch.carrier.com, and I'll show you those to you guys again at the end here. There's the video stuff. When I actually log into the stat, I can see all of my zones at one time to see what they're doing. Just like with the Benstar and Honeywell ones, I can have multiple locations, multiple properties, and each property can have multiple stats and systems inside it. So it's pretty similar in that regard. I can change my schedules. I can override my stat temperature, put it in the hold mode, put my vacation mode on, those normal kind of things. I can set it up to send me emails and text message alerts and that kind of thing. Eric actually asks, does the consumer have to pay for the web service? I'm not sure which stat you're referring to, but the answer is no for all of them. Benstar, Honeywell, Bryant, and Carrier, the ones we showed you so far, those do not have any subscription fees or anything like that. You basically are buying the stat and having it installed, and then you have free access to the websites and to the apps. So there's no recurring fees that are monthly or annual or anything like that. This is what the apps look like. If you log in, actually if you log in from the website and go to change anything, or you log into the app, or you log into the stat, all of them actually look exactly like this. They show you your current temperature, they show you the current weather. When you click on the stat itself, you can go in and start changing the temperatures, change the modes, change the schedules, hit the menu button, any of the normal stuff you do at the stat. It looks exactly the same. There will be some buttons that are missing when you're doing it online versus at the actual stat. For example, you cannot do any of the service setup stuff when you're not on the site for obvious safety reasons. And you can't change any of the Wi-Fi settings, because obviously if you change the Wi-Fi settings when you're remote, you'll inadvertently disconnect yourself from the Wi-Fi, which obviously wouldn't be helpful. But the rest of the stuff is pretty much the same. When you navigate the stat, it's the same as navigating the iPad apps and Android apps, and it's the same as going to the website. All right, so with that, that's the Carrier stat, the Bryant stat, the Honeywell Prestige IAQ, and the Ventstar Color Touch. So here is 7 popular color touch or color screen thermostats sitting side by side in comparison form here. We're going to run through this real quick so everybody kind of sees. Just because it's on this screen does not mean that we necessarily sell it. We sell 1, 2, 3, 4 of these currently, and we have sold 5 of them historically. But these are all ones that I've researched and or played with over the years, and I track how they operate and so forth. They are in order of lowest cost to highest cost from left to right. So the least expensive one is the Ventstar stat. The Nest thermostat, which some of you may have heard of, is the only one on this page, by the way, that is not a touchscreen stat. It is color, but it is not touchscreen. That costs $59 more than the Benstar stat would cost a contractor. The Honeywell Prestige IQ, which we talked about a few minutes ago, that cost $105 more than Ventstar. The ecobee, which is a fairly popular one, is basically the same as the Honeywell one. The Carrier and Bryant ones are about $130 more than the Ventstar. And the Prolifics ones, which are the ones we used to rep from 2005 to like 2010, are $365 more. And that is one of the reasons why we stopped repping those, because they were not keeping cost competitive with the other brands. But at the time we took those on, Prolifics, it was pretty much Prolifics and ecobee that were in the marketplace in 2005. Nobody else really existed. Now there's dozens of these things out there. So in terms of staging, almost all of these are 3 heat, 2 cool. I'll tell you which ones are an exception to that. The Nest one is 2 heat, 2 cool on a gas electric system, and that's if you have the second generation. The first generation only did 1 stage of cooling, so just be careful on that if you're going to buy that stat. You don't get an old one. The only other one that's different than the 3 heat, 2 cool other than the Nest are the Carrier and Bryant ones. They do 3 heat and 2 cool, and they can also do modulating heating and modulating cooling, which is basically 61 stages from 40 to 100% in 1% increments. On the heat pump side, they're all 4 heat, 2 cool, with the exception, once again, of the Nest. It does 1 less stage than the other ones do, and then the Carrier and Bryant ones also can do modulation. Everybody can do dual fuel changeover systems, with the exception of the Prolific stat cannot do that, and the older version of the Nest could not do it, but the current generation 2 does. Humidification or dehumidification control, so that means turning on a humidifier or turning on a dehumidification sequence, which usually slows down the blower of your indoor unit and turns cooling on. All of them can do that with the exception of the Ventstar one. However, like I told you earlier, the Ventstar option for that, the T5900 and T6900, are coming out soon. And soon is going to be, in this case, a matter of weeks. We actually already have them shipping to us. So usually I don't say anything until it's real, but in 2 weeks we should have it, so I think we're probably real. I probably just jinxed this, though. From the wiring standpoint, the Ventstar, the Nest, and the Prolifics all have normal, traditional HVAC wiring, which means I got, from the thermostat to the piece of equipment, I got the usual G, Y, W, R, common, and perhaps more, depending on whether I have second stage heat, second stage cooling, humidifier, etc. Those are all traditional. The Honeywell one is 2 wires, just needs power. Then he talks wirelessly back to the little box that you install at the furnace or equipment itself. The Bryant and Carrier ones are 4-wire communicating from the stat down to the furnace or fan coil. And the Ecobee uses a communication as well. It's similar to the Honeywell. You got a 2-piece type thing. The stat goes on the wall. It has 4 wires that communicate back to a sub base that gets installed next to the furnace. Most of the stats have the ability to have remote temperature inputs. The Ventstar ones, you can do room temperature sensing, or you can do outdoor air temperature sensing. The Nest ones have no remote temperature inputs. The Honeywell one has 4, which is the best out of all of them. You can use them for temperature or contact closure. So you can have supply and return temperatures. You can have outside air temperature. You can have remote room temperature sensing. You can have contact closures if something happened, like a sump pump switch or something like that. The Ecobee is similar to the Honeywell one, except it's just 2 instead of 4 inputs. Prolifics is also similar, but it's 3 inputs. So those 3 are kind of similar, that you can have temperature or contact closures. The Bryant and Carrier ones can just do indoor temperature and outdoor temperature. So they're more similar to the Benstar one. Wallpaper backgrounds, most of these stats just have the regular background. What you see is what you get. The Ventstar one, like I said, you can do custom pictures. The Honeywell one, you can't do custom pictures, but you can do custom color themes from a drop-down menu. The Ventstar, Bryant, and Carrier ones can do digital picture frames. The Ventstar scrolls through 100 pictures. The Carrier and Bryant just do 1. None of the rest do that. The Ventstar, Honeywell, and Carrier ones have interchangeable faceplates, so you can do multiple colors. Usually that means white, silver, and black, although the Ventstar one also has a wood grain choice. Most of them have the ability to have your dealer logo loaded on the stat. The ones that do not are the Nest and the Prolifics. There's no dealer logo option for those ones. Customizable service alerts. All of these stats can send you an email or a text-based email message. How do you want to word it? A text message via your text email address. If you don't know what that means, I can explain it to you later. But you can do email or text message alerts to any one of these stats. Additionally, the ones that have the dealer logos also can do a pop-up with the dealer contact info as well whenever there's an alert. The Ventstar is the only one where you can send messages to the stat. Some guys like that because they can send a message, seasonally telling people there's a special deal or something like that. Weather forecast, the Nest, Ecobee, Bryant, and Carrier ones all integrate a weather forecast of some purpose into their stat. And then in terms of energy tracking, they all do some form of energy tracking, whether it's dollars or consumption, with the exception of the Bryant stat. Everybody's got a iOS app, which is iPhone or iPad, and Android app. The 2 exceptions to that are Ventstar, which has the iPhone, iPad, Android, and BlackBerry, and then the Prolifics, which does not technically have any apps, although there are third-party companies that have written apps for it. Nobody's got any monthly or annual recurring fees, so it's just you buy the product, have it installed, and that's it. Everybody has the ability to upgrade their firmware. They all do it a little bit differently. The Honeywell, Carrier, and Bryant ones do it over USB connection. The Nest, Ecobee, and Prolifics do it over an internet connection. and the Ventstar does it over the SD card, although it should be doing it over the internet, I believe is a new feature coming. The dimensions are all on there. They're all fairly similar. Most of these are wide horizontal type stats. The ones that are a little bit unique, the Nest one is small. It's like a 3-inch wide circle, a 3-inch diameter circle, so that one's a little bit different looking. The new Honeywell Prestige one is smaller than the old one used to be, so it's smaller than the rest of these guys are now. And the Prolifics one's pretty large. The rest of them, for the most part, are 5 inches wide by 4 inches tall by 1 inch thick. Obviously, everybody does English, but some of them also do Spanish and French. Ventstar, Honeywell, and Ecobee will do multiple languages. Warranties are all over the place. You can see here the least expensive one and the most expensive one both have a 1-year warranty. The Nest and Honeywell have 5-year warranties. Ecobee is 3. The Carrier and Bryant is a 5-year warranty, although if you register the thermostat along with your furnace and AC unit at the time of purchase, it actually jumps up to a 10-year warranty. So that's really the best warranty in the industry in that regard. Got a couple more screens for you, but let me just check the questions real quick. Let's see. Some folks are asking me to email this particular slide, so I can do that. Tanju says the Ecobee comes in one package. Yeah, so does the Honeywell one. The Ecobee and Honeywell ones are split designs, but you are just buying one thing, but it's one piece that installs at the furnace, one that installs at the wall. Clarence asks if someone can buy any of these stats. I'm not sure what you mean there, Clarence. All these are obviously available for purchase. Maybe you're asking about consumers. Consumers probably can't buy all of these stats easily. Some of them are only sold through dealer networks. Tom asked if you could put multiple Honeywell Prestige stats on one Redlink receiver. The answer to that is yes, you can. All right. So then I got one more last slide for you. We showed you the Honeywell Prestige on here because it's the one that really compares to these other ones. Color screen, full heating and cooling functions, full staging, humidification, all that normal stuff we talked about. But Honeywell does have some other wireless products as well that are less expensive than this one. Obviously, they do less, but this is a little Honeywell comparison. So just for the 6 Honeywell stats that are on the market. Honeywell Internet Accessible stats come in 2 flavors, Redlink and Wi-Fi. So this first column is Redlink. That would include the Honeywell Prestige IQ that I showed you down here on the bottom left. It also includes the old Honeywell Prestige, which is just a few less features and a little bit bigger, fatter stat. It includes the new Vision Pro stat. It includes the Focus Pro wireless stat. All those fall under the Redlink platform. Then additionally, Honeywell has 2 stats that talk Wi-Fi directly without using Redlink. And by the way, Redlink wireless is for more than just internet purposes. It supports wireless outside air sensors, wireless humidity sensors, handheld controllers that you have in your house, and all kinds of stuff like that. But if you don't want that stuff and you just want to get this thing on the internet, Honeywell does have 2 other ones. There's the Vision Pro Wi-Fi and the Focus Pro Wi-Fi stats. So they have 2 other ones there in that regard. Those 2 stats do have regular traditional HVAC wiring, whereas the Redlink ones, they talk wirelessly back to a equipment module, and then they only need 2 wires for power typically. All right, so there's a little bit differences on those guys there. Does anybody have more questions? Let's see. Does the Ventstar, Kevin asks if the Ventstar T5800 has the ability to use an outside air sensor and a remote indoor sensor, and the answer to that question is currently no. It only supports 1 sensor with the current version of this product. Let's see, Dale asks, are all systems expandable from multiple zones, such as 14 zones of heating in a hydronic system? Yes, all of these products could be used for multiple zones in the same house. They all do it a little bit differently. Like the Honeywell ones, you'll have one of these gateways, these Redlink gateways, and all 14 of your zones would talk to that gateway plugged into your home router. Whereas the other products, each one of them would talk wirelessly to a router. The only one that's not going to do the zoning very well is going to be the Carrier and Bryant one. Do the hydronic zoning very well is the Carrier and Bryant ones. For airside zoning, the Carrier and Bryant are the best because it's already integrated, no bypass dampers, all that stuff. For hydronic zoning, they don't support that. So you would need to stick with Benstar or Honeywell or one of the other non-furnace manufacturers, if you will. All right, does anybody else have any other questions that they want to type in here? I'm going to hang on for another couple minutes. I'm sorry that we went over time there, but I was trying to jam, like 5 topics into one webinar. But I'll stay online here for a couple minutes. Some of you guys asked me to send you some various things, which I can do, but I'll hang on here for another minute or so. Up on the screen right now are the websites that are applicable to the stuff we have talked about. I'm also going to take those right now, and I'm going to paste them into the chat box, so you can just click on them if you want to. We'll see if that works. Hopefully it does. So you should have those in the chat box, and you should be able to click on any one of them and go directly to those websites. And I'll leave that up for a minute, too, if you want to cut and paste it or something like that, as opposed to typing them or handwriting them off of this screen right here. I'll just leave that up for you. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, well, kind of in summary, the stats that do the most are the Carrier and Bryant ones, because they're getting all that data from the furnaces themselves and all the alarm data and error codes and all that stuff. However, the downside with them is they only work with those particular types of equipment. The Ventstar one is probably the best for just entry-level cost point type thing for rooftops or residential split systems. The Honeywell one probably would be the best if you got more challenging applications, like you want to do a zoning system, but you don't have a Carrier and Bryant furnace. The Honeywell will be the best one there because they actually have a zoning system compatible with these wireless stats, whereas Ventstar doesn't. So they all kind of have their various niches. And then obviously at TEC, we're not big proponents of the other ones. I already told you we used the Rep Prolifics. It's a good product. It worked fine. We had no problems with it. It just kind of started creeping up in price there. The ecobee, the times I played with it, it seems to be a good product. A little bit pricier than the Honeywell and Ventstar, but seems to be reliable. The Nest one is kind of priced between the Ventstar and the Honeywell one. The biggest issue we have with that one here at TEC, other than having a lot less features than some of these other ones, is that it is sold, retail at every Lowe's and Home Depot and that kind of thing. And we're obviously advocates of having professional HVAC contractors install these things. So we're kind of not big fans of that one. But I've not heard any technical blurbs about it, like problems or anything. Oh, and then Dale asks who's going to win the Stanley Cup. Obviously, I'm from Chicago, Dale, so I'm going to go with the Hawks. If I didn't do that, people would probably come rushing through my office door and beat me down right now. But I think they got a pretty good chance there. All right, guys, I'm signing off. Hopefully everybody got what they needed. If not, send me an email, and I will get it to you. Thank you.